Hello, everybody, and welcome to Sake Revolution. This is, in case you didn't know, America's first sake podcast. And I am one of your hosts, John Puma from the Sake Notes. Also, I run the Internet Sake Discord. You can find a link to that on the Sake Revolution site. For purposes of this show, I am the sake nerd guy.
And I'm your host, Timothy Sullivan. I'm a sake samurai, sake educator, as well as the founder of the Urban Sake website. And every week, John and I will be here tasting and chatting about all things sake and doing our best to make it fun and easy to understand.
Well, hello, Tim. How are you today?
John, I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm not doing too badly. Not doing too badly at all. The Omicron wave is starting to settle a little bit. I actually went out yesterday a little bit. That was nice.
Wow.
Got to drink some sake with some fun people.
Yeah, and 2022 is starting to roll along. We are getting into our groove, and it's very exciting to be in a new year filled with new sake and new opportunities. Really excited.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what is on tap for today?
Well, 2 years ago on this day, I was getting ready to go to Japan. And the second stop on my trip was to one of my favorite places for sake. One of your favorite places for sake. And it's about time we finally got around on the show to talking about this favorite of ours.
Does it begin with Yama?
It does. But now we know from previous episodes it does not necessarily narrow it down as much as one would like. But yes, this is Yamagata.
Yamagata. So our dedicated listeners have heard a lot about Yamagata, but we decided to finally go there and do our prefectural deep dive into the prefecture of Yamagata. Now, John, I know this is an absolute favorite of yours.
Absolutely. And I finally got to go there 2 years ago after many trips to Japan and a lot of desire to make it over to Yamagata. I finally got to live the dream.
And this was your trip right before the panini, right?
Yeah, yes, Tim, the panini, the big panini of 2020 and 2021 and a little bit of 2022 so far. Right when things were kind of about to get serious. Is when I came back to America, which was, so I was right there when there were a handful of cases in Japan. There was a big run on masks. I'll tell you that. It was really hard to get a mask in Japan at the time.
That's hard to believe because they have masks everywhere, even in the before times.
Suddenly everybody wanted them.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, they were way ahead of the curve on masks buying.
Totally. So you have some relatively fresh experience being in Yamagata. Do you want to tell us about your trip, where you went, anything you remember, anything that stuck out to you?
Sure. So we stayed in Yamagata City, so Yamagata-ku, and we actually stayed in a hotel that was inside of the train station, inside like Yamagata JR station. So very convenient for getting around. And the main reason to go for me was to visit Dewazakura, which is, one of my favorite sake breweries. Absolutely love their stuff, and it was a dream come true to be able to visit the brewery in person, and then just kind of look around and see what's going on in Yamagata, what the sake scene is like, the local bars, that kind of thing, and that was really nice too. It was a lot of fun to get around there. Yamagata, for a city, it is pretty rural. There's not much in the way of mass transit. Like usually the cities in Japan have at the very least like a streetcar system.
Yeah.
You don't expect a subway everywhere, but you expect some kind of streetcars usually. And this was just like buses. That was it. So it was a little bit less than that. I was like, oh, okay. I had to get used to that. It was a little bit different, but we adjusted and found our way around and had some really great sake experiences.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been to Yamagata as well, but years ago. And I remember I probably stayed in that same hotel in the train station of Yamagata City.
It was is lovely.
But yeah, it's a beautiful prefecture, lots of mountains, lots of snow in the winter, and just a very, very beautiful place to visit.
Yeah. Unfortunately, when I was there, no snow. It was raining, even though it was February.
Wah, wah.
But that is climate change, folks.
Well, when it comes to sake, Yamagata has a nickname. I don't know if this is a self-imposed nickname or something that the world came up with, but Yamagata is known as the Ginjo Kingdom.
I like that. And I think I understand why, given my sake tastes, why I'd be happy about that.
So explain it for our listeners. Why do you think that's appropriate?
Well, Ginjo flavor and aroma is usually associated with fruity sakes, big fruity aromas. All those melon bombs that you and I enjoy so much. A big bouquet on the sake, and then like a nice fruity follow up. That kind of thing is what generally is associated with Ginjo, and that sort of thing is also kind of like what's associated with Yamagata in a lot of ways with Yamagata sake. That's what people think of when they think of Yamagata sake. That really strong Ginjo aroma, Ginjo flavor is really commonly associated with sake from that region.
Yep, that's true. And when you say this word Ginjo, it's one of the classifications of sake, right? We have 3 Junmai classifications and 3 non-Junmai classifications.
Yeah.
For the Junmai, we've got Junmai, and then Junmai Ginjo, and then Junmai Daiginjo. And then for the alcohol added, we have Honjozo, Ginjo, and Daiginjo. So the top 4 classifications all include this word Ginjo. So sometimes Ginjo is used to refer to premium sake in general. Like, not just one of the 4 top classifications, but when you say Ginjo Shu or Ginjo Sake, meaning the general vibe, you can be referring to those top 4 categories. So you're right on the money there, I think, with Ginjo Kingdom referring to a place that really specializes in this more aromatic style of sake. And from all our past tastings, we know that's true.
Yeah, and I think it's really important that people understand, though, also that, as you pointed out, there's Ginjo, the classification, and then there's Ginjo, the word that can be used to describe a style.
Bingo,
and there's no easy way to tell the difference unless it's like contextual, unfortunately. And that was something that in my early sake days really threw me for a loop a few times. I just assumed that if something was a Ginjo or Junmai Ginjo, it was going to have these properties. And, well, not necessarily. That kind of just means the rice milling percentage. So it's very important to know that when we say Ginjo in that context, it's really about the style rather than the milling.
Right. So we know we're dealing with the Ginjo Kingdom. And I looked up one statistic that kind of also supports this title for Yamagata. So a lot of prefectures, you want to look at how much premium sake they produce versus how much table sake they produce. And for Yamagata, they have one of the highest percentages of premium versus table sake production. So I found statistics for 2017, which was a few years ago, but Yamagata produced 78% premium sake. The nationwide average is 34%. So your average prefecture out there produces 34% of their sake's premium. But for Yamagata, it is 78% of what they make falls into these premium categories. So I think they've earned that title of Ginjo Kingdom.
Are you trying to say that we have expensive tastes?
Well, again, Yamagata is your thing, John.
It was our thing, Tim.
No.
I just got abandoned here. Wait a minute.
I'm a Nagata boy through and through.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. So you're taking ownership of Yamagata for this episode.
Okay, I will take it. I am happy to take ownership of Yamagata for this episode.
Yeah. So do you want to guess how many breweries they have in Yamagata?
I feel like I should know that. And sadly, I don't. But I'm going to say there's a lot. There's definitely a lot, and there's definitely not as many as Niigata.
Well, for context, we can give people the most. And so Kagoshima is the least with one sake brewery in Kagoshima. And Niigata has about 90, 89 or 90 breweries. So that's the most. So somewhere between 1 and 90.
All right. So I'm going to say somewhere around 50.
Oh, that's right. 50.
Boom.
50. I've read 51 in a couple places. So about 50 sake breweries. Bingo.
I will accept 51 as around 50.
Yes.
I
do as well.
All right. Yeah, that is a lot of breweries. And yeah, I feel like there are a bunch. There's an interesting thing about Yamagata that I found when I was researching going there. And that is that most of the breweries are actually on the other side of a really large mountain away from Yamagata City. So you have Yamagata City, and then next to that is, or relatively nearby, is a mountain called Mount Gasan. And Mount Gasan is massive, not in its height. It's not necessarily a really tall mountain, but it is an extraordinarily wide mountain. It's still pretty tall, but it is very, very, it takes up a lot of real estate. And there's a lot of sake breweries that are on the northwest side of the mountain. And from Yamagata City, you're talking about 3 or 4 hours of a commute to get over there.
Wow.
And so that's part of the reason why I never went to all those other breweries that are on the other side of the mountain. Because it is really, really far. Let me rephrase that. It is very difficult to get to on overland. Yeah. Because you have to kind of go in between the mountains and through paths and all that. No, it's just a lot.
Yep. Yeah. Well, this whole Ginjo Kingdom and 78% of sake produced being premium grade, this did not just happen by accident. You're
telling me there was a plan?
There was a plan.
Uh-huh.
It all began in the late 80s, and the Yamagata Sake Brewers Association got together, and they established the Yamagata Brewing Research Society. And all the breweries in the association got together and focused their efforts as a group on increasing the quality and the premium nature of Yamagata sake. And that bore fruit like 20 to 30 years later.
Wow.
When the quality of Yamagata sake really started to grow quite a bit. And I think in 2004, maybe for the first time in 2004, Yamagata won the most gold medals in the National New Sake Appraisal, which is the countrywide sake competition that they have every year. So from 2004 on, they started winning the most gold medals, not every year, but many, many years. So it really was the result of them deciding to work together back in the 80s and transition their prefecture into something really known for this premium style of sake.
So it was a work of focus on the behalf of these breweries and just deciding what they wanted their reality to be and then putting their minds to it. That's really interesting.
There's one other thing that happened as fallout from this focus on Ginjo, focus on premium sake, and that is the GI Yamagata. And we talked about this before, I think in the Dewa-san-san episode. GI.
Probably. And I believe we also mentioned GIs for other prefectures in the past.
Yes. So GI, for those not in the know, is a geographical indication, just like you have it for champagne, Darjeeling tea. In order to make a product that has this certification attached to it, you have to produce it in the region, in the geographical region, according to certain rules that are laid out. Mm-hmm. And Yamagata was the very first prefecture to establish a GI for their entire prefecture.
Wow.
Very cool. That was in 2016.
2016. And what are the rules for this one? I mean, I know that they do vary a little bit from GI to GI. So what does Yamagata have going on?
Well, I got the rules here. The first one is the rice and the rice koji must come from Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Water collected to be used in the brew must come from Yamagata.
Mm-hmm.
No sugar can be used as an ingredient, so no added sugar allows. And then the sake must be produced, stored, and bottled in Yamagata prefecture. And lastly, the Brewers Association conducts quality reviews on a regular basis.
One thing that really stood out to me as surprising is that the rice and the koji rice must be made in Japan.
Yes.
Not Yamagata. That's fascinating to me. I always assume that like when there'd be a GI, the first thing is going to be like local rice. So this is that is very surprising to me. I mean, it's not not disappointing or anything like that. I'm just surprised.
Yeah. On the other hand, this was the very first prefecture to do a GI. Maybe they didn't want to box themselves into a corner. Right. Who knows? But those are the rules that I found on the Japanese government website for the GI for Yamagata. And this is recognized by the World Trade Organization.
Wow.
So it's an internationally recognized certification for this sake produced under these rules in Yamagata. That
is really cool. Now, one last thing about this GI. If I'm not mistaken, Tim, I've heard from you that they've gone ahead and made a song for the GI. Is this true?
Yes.
All right. Now,
so we have to encourage everyone to listen to our Dewa-san-san episode.
Please. It is just, that song was, it was a hoot.
It was actually really good. It was
very
in my
funny, though.
It was an earworm in my head for about 3 weeks after that episode.
Yeah. In the interest of getting a live reaction, I have not yet heard this song. So Tim, I imagine you have.
Yes, I did listen to the GI Yamagata song. And I'm going to play it for you. I'm going to play about half the song. The second half of the lyrics of the song are actually in English.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So here we go. We're going to play a sample of the GI Yamagata song.
Anytime, anywhere.
That's pretty good. Having said that, I think I like the Dewa-san-san one a little better. It was a little more catchy. This is good. This is also good.
I think they did a great job with both songs, but I agree with you. Dewa-san-san song is a little catchier, but
there's something special about that one, I gotta say.
Yeah. But you can't argue with a theme song.
It's true. Pivoting into the tasting portion of our program here, Tim, we do have, I imagine, a sample of local Yamagata sake with us today. Is that right?
That's right. We have one of the most famous Yamagata breweries, dare I say the most famous.
Yeah.
And this brewery is one that we featured on episode 1 of Sake Revolution, back when we were podcasting babies.
Yeah. And that is the Dewazakura Oka.
Yes.
Which is quite famous.
Yes. So this ties very much in with the development of that prefecture-wide Yamagata Brewing Research Society. So the sake we're going to taste today, the Dewazakura Oka, it was introduced to the market in 1980.
1980, wow.
1980. So this is early days for premium sake to be widespread on the market.
Mm-hmm.
And Dewazakura, as a brewery, made a decision that they wanted to focus more on premium Ginjo style sakes. And this was the first one that they released. And demand was off the hook for this sake. So this is the old school Ginjo. And this really ties into the history of that research institute that they developed as a prefecture. And I know that the owners over the years have been huge supporters of getting Yamagata more known as the home, the Ginjo Kingdom. So it's been a long, long road for them to see this sake really blossom and become the poster child. This is the poster child for Ginjo Kingdom, I think.
That makes sense to me. I think so. That stands to reason. And this is, as you pointed out, a Ginjo in classification as well as style. So
Yes.
we mentioned earlier that you can kind of go two ways with what that could mean. In this case, it's both.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll run down the rest of the stats on this one. So once again, this is the Dewazakura Oka Ginjo, of course, from Yamagata, from Dewazakura Brewery. And they are using Dewa Sansan and Hainuki rice. They say Maibuai, the milling percentage is down to 50% remaining. The sake meter value is a cozy +5. And the alcohol percentage is sitting at 15.5. And the acidity is 1.2. I almost missed that one.
And we've both had this sake plenty of times. So I don't think we're going to have any big reveals here. No jump scare.
No jump scares, no. So yeah, why don't we go ahead and grab our glasses and our bottles and give this one a pour.
All right. So it looks very clear in the glass.
Extremely.
And if we give it a smell,
Oh, that's just a
lovely.
comforting smell. It's just a comforting aroma.
it smells like the Ginjo Kingdom.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I absolutely fell in love with this sake a little bit earlier on during my sake tasting career. I'm sure we mentioned this in the first episode. That at one point when I was really starting to get rolling into sake, they introduced a special anniversary bottle of this. And I was like, oh, this is new and interesting. And I bought it. And that was my introduction to it. And I was like, this doesn't taste like anything I've ever had before. This is amazing. And I ended up buying I probably bought like 6 or 12 bottles over the course of that run because I just loved it so much. And yeah, I'm still a big fan to this day. It's still a sake that brings me back and always makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside.
Yep. Well, I'll give it a smell and see what we pick up on here. Overall, lovely, soft fruits.
Yeah.
And I'm not getting the super juicy, deep tropical fruits that you get in some sakes, but more like a little bit of melon and some cherry. And this sake is actually known in English. The English name for Oka is cherry bouquet. And I think that really comes across on the aroma as well.
Yeah. And I think that cherry is not something you often get from sake, but it's almost always present in this one. And certainly is the case today.
Yeah. And I wanted to mention, talking about cherries, is that I looked up what the most famous foods from Yamagata are. And number one
Speaking of cherries.
is cherries.
Yeah.
So Yamagata cherries are so famous in Japan. They can be produced as a gift-giving fruit, very high quality. But another fruit that is very famous from Yamagata is pears.
Really?
Yes. Wow. And I can't help but think I'm smelling a little bit of pear going on here in this aroma as well.
That's interesting. Let me give that another smell now that I have that in my brain.
Yes. The power of suggestion.
I see what you mean. I got you.
Almost like apple skin or pear skin. That's what I'm picking up on, a little bit of that. It brings just a hint of a tartness to the aroma. It's not quite as sickly sweet kind of fruitiness. There's a little bit of tartness that you might get in a cherry or a pear that I pick up on. A crisp edge, right?
Yes. It's fruity, but it is not overwhelmingly fruity or overwhelmingly sweet. It's just a really pleasant level. It's like they know exactly where to hold back, where to stop.
Yep. Again, the B word coming in strong. Balance.
Mm-hmm. Balance.
That's our thing. That's our jam. All right, let's give it a taste.
You get started. I'm going to smell this a little bit more.
What's so great about sipping on this sake for me is there is not a hint of harshness to it. It's soft, it's round, it goes down silky smooth, but it's not wimpy in any way.
No.
It's got a nice structure, nice body, really smooth, gentle fruits, but enough alcohol and very gentle acidity, but enough alcohol to give it structure, give it some body. I love that.
It's funny. I think that in when you talk about Niigata sake, you often talk about how it's very aroma and taste-wise, it's very reserved or pulled back.
Yes.
I feel like this is pulled back and reserved for Yamagata, like for this style. Like it's all of the ingredients are there, but it's not just throwing it all in your face. It's just kind of like showing it to you instead of just like overwhelming you with it. And I think that's one of the more pleasant things about this. You mentioned the softness, the roundness, really, really nice there. And it all turns into this really just wonderful sipping experience.
Yeah. These types of sakes have to know their place. And if you're having a ginjo, again, this is not a junmai ginjo. This is an alcohol-added sake. So it has that rounded, more silky character to it. And I feel that comes from the distilled alcohol that's added to it. And I couldn't agree more with what you said. You know, if you wanted that sledgehammer over the head fruitiness, you would reach for a namasake from Yamagata, and you would be happy as could be if you wanted that super fruit bomb. But this is really balanced and has a nice restraint. It is sippable, easy drinking. You don't have to overthink this one, and you can just sit back and enjoy while you're sipping on it. It's just easy to enjoy.
And that is why it is one of my favorites.
Yes.
I love a nice, easy sipping, fruity sake. This is so nice. The flavor doesn't linger very much. It's not it's not heavy. It's just really, really easy drinking.
So, John, any other Yamagata stories you got for us while we're sipping on this beautiful Oka?
Absolutely. So when doing kind of research for what was around the station, like what kind of bars were there, what kind of experiences we can have, there was a bar that we had shortlisted. When we were at Dewazakura, we found out that this bar is actually favored by some of the people there. And we're like, well, that's all the endorsement I need. So, so Michelle and I went, and in all the photos of the bar, there were a lot of bottles on the walls, bottles up the stairs, bottles against the corners, all that. And I had assumed that all of those were like decorative empties. You know, a lot of bars have empty bottles adorning the walls, just kind of giving you a feel for the kinds of stuff they've had, the highlights, that kind of stuff. But then we got in there and we started drinking a little bit. We found out that these are actually aging experiments that the owner is doing. Wow. And all these bottles they have sake in them. And one of the things that he did was he grabbed a bottle from the year Michelle was born from the wall, and then that same sake from the year from 2020, and we tasted them side by side.
Oh my God, that is insane!
It was really crazy, yeah. And he had a lot of like really interesting, different stuff over there to talk about and to sip on. He also had your usual Yamagata delights. There was a lot of Giandai that night. Just a lot of like special. The guy was super sake nerd. And so going to a place where the proprietor is a super sake nerd and you go in there and you're a sake nerd, you're going to leave with some knowledge and some really great, interesting stuff. And fortunately for us, we did. It was called Taro's Bar. We'll leave a Google link in the show notes. And I recommend, if you can make it over there, if you happen to be in the Yamagata area, if you're listening from Japan, or one day when they open the borders again, it's a place that you can try to visit. Really fun times.
I am there. I can't wait to try this place, but I don't think they're going to have a sake from my birth year. I don't even.
I didn't ask for mine either. But yeah, that was a lot of fun.
All right. Well, what more can we ask for? Delicious sake from the Ginjo Kingdom, wonderful stories and reminiscence from your trips there. This has been a great time, John. Thanks so much for tasting with me. And I also want to thank our listeners for tuning in this week. We really do hope that you're enjoying our show. If you'd like to show your support for Sake Revolution, the best way to help us out is to join our community on Patreon. We're a listener-supported show, and we really do hope that you'll consider lending us your support to help us bring you Sake Revolution every week.
And if you'd like to support us, you want to go over to patreon.com/Sake Revolution. And we've got a couple of tiers there, and you can pick the one that is right for you. If you are not in a position to become a patron, though, and you want to support us in other ways, there are ways out there, fortunately. Just listening to the show, you guys are really helping out. Telling your friends is a great way to get the word out about the show. And then, of course, the tried and true, leave a review on your podcast platform of choice. It goes for Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all that stuff. Just leave a little review. Tell people what to expect when they listen to our show. And that gets the word out about Sake Revolution.
And as always, if you would like to learn more about any of the topics or sakes we talked about in today's episode, be sure to visit our website, sakerevolution.com, for all the detailed show notes.
Ooh, and will we have a link to the song, the G.I. Yamagata song?
We will have an embedded YouTube video. You do not want to miss it.
Oh, I'm going there right now. And if you have sake questions that you need answered, we want to hear from you, of course. If you have some other sake prefectures with their own musical tracks, let us know. I want to make an episode about that. That'll be fun. Reach out to us. The email address, of course, is feedback@sakerevolution.com. So until next time, please grab a glass. Remember, keep drinking sake and
Kanpai!